Hello, this is Mark Denham, radio presenter, audio producer, podcaster, and voiceover artist. Today on the audio journey. Do you know what? I was going to say today's audio journey, and then I got to today's on the audio journey. What's going on? Let's start again, shall we? Today on the audio journey, we're looking at how it is that I would process audio. Now, I have a set of presets in here that come from my actual multi-track presets. And they show you how the audio is going to be produced in the multitrack. Now, this set of presets sits on my voice bus, and then on the individual voice tracks, there are things like bass roll-offs, chorus, flanger, EQ, distortion, etc., etc. But this sits on my voice bus. And this is a setup that I use whenever I'm producing any form of imaging, or indeed, it's very, very similar to the one that I use when I'm producing a podcast or anything like that. So drops, imaging, things like that, and then podcast is very, very similar, although obviously I want more dynamic range in the podcast audio, so it is slightly different. Now, in terms of EQ, as I mentioned last time, when we looked at the bass roll-off, there's no one-size-fits-all for EQ. But in my presets here, we have me, a voice of me. Big challenge for us to put this together for you. We have a voice of Graham.
I think that, dare I say, he looks very...
And we also have a podcast that I worked on as well.
Because that brings me to my next question on some of the challenges.
So we have 3 different voices, 2 male, 1 female, 1 mine, 2 not mine. We'll start then with mine, and we'll have a quick drop down here, and we'll put this on. You can see here, firstly, we have the restoration, not turned on by default, but you have the D-reverb, just in case somebody's recorded in a very, very live room and they have a lot of room noise. You have the dynamics, which is just an auto gate to cut out any background noise. If you have a little look here, we're okay. In terms of this recording, all is well. Then we're on to the de-esser, which is set up primarily for my voice, which mine's quite high. My sibilant frequency is quite high, which just removes those tinny noises and just stops them being a problem. The FFT filter, that rolls off the bass. The parametric equalizer then tidies up the rest of the EQ curve, a little bit of single band compression, and just a little bit of hard limiting, just in case anything should be looking like it's going to exceed the 0 decibel threshold. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this little bit here, okay? And I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get rid of that and get rid of that, and we'll just leave ourselves just shy of a minute to work with. And there we are. So there is the audio. Had we been able to go ahead with our plans, there are many contributors across the Defenseman of the Year. So there we are, just a little bit of audio there that is processed. You can see here, bass rolled off in the FFT. Here. Now, this has been rest of the EQ done here. And in the case of my voice, there's not really that much that gets done. There's a little bit removed here at just the 200 hertz frequency, and just a tiny little bit added right here up at the 10K. So nothing much really going on in terms of that. And that's that. Let's move on to Graham's voice now, and we will apply the same to Graham. There is a little bit of background noise here. You can just see that background noise. What I'll do here is I'll get rid of that, and then I'll get rid of that. So we're just working with this, and you can see here that there is a little bit of background noise here. So what we'll do is we will turn on the dynamics, which will get rid of the background noise. And then that will hopefully tidy that up. We'll have a little listen.
You see a new player come in, and like you're talking with the coaches about it, and
so no need for the D-reverb. But to be fair, if you look at the D-reverb here that I have, it's very, very minor. And even then, I'd normally dial it down if I did ever have to use it, because I just think it produces horrible audio. It really does. And the best advice there is either get a dynamic microphone, which is more forgiving to room tone, or record in a different environment if you have a condenser microphone. But we won't be using that here. Again, we have the dynamics then that I've just said. That's going to get rid of this background noise. The de-esser, which is set to me. If we output the sibilance only, Now you can barely hear that because we're outputting just the sibilance only. I'm going to take this down a little bit here and try this again now, a little lower. So that's a Graham has a lower sibilant frequency area than me. Neither of the sibilances are too bad in those anyway, but we'll just tidy it up anyway. Again, the FFT filter rolls off the bass, and then this is where we would have a look here.
More and more the confidence in him, the confidence in everybody around him growing and growing and growing. And I think that, dare I say, he looks very comfortable where he is in life right now, very comfortable where he is as a player. And that's so much. He isn't. You see guys come in and they're trying to find their feet and they're a bit scrabbly and they're a bit. Ryan's just confident and very comfortable where he is. And look, I know this is always like something you get to at this stage in the summer, and people will be going, I'm looking at the Bees roster. And
so there we are. We've just tweaked the EQ there. Again, just a little bit of single band compression, basically affecting everything in the case of this audio, because nothing's actually reached -5 anyway. Only a small ratio, 2:1, so not really much compression, and that hard limiter again. And if we go back to mine here, and we apply this, you'll see, or I'll tell you what we will do. We won't apply it. We'll open the preview window. Just take a second just to come together. There you are. Not really much change in that waveform from the top to the bottom. If you have a look at Graham's here with the preview window popped open, what you should see is not a great amount of change in the actual audio part of the window. But what we do need to be looking at here, you can see we have now got rid of that background noise. So if we play it now, nothing. If we turn off that gate, then you can hear just the tiniest little bit of noise. And just to prove it is there, let me normalize that noise up, and you get just a little bit of background noise there. So obviously with the dynamics on, you get rid of all of that background noise, and it's all gone. You can see the waveform itself hasn't changed that much though, because we're only doing just a minimal amount of processing here. And there you go. Final sound.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those interesting ones as well, because look, Ryan really shone through as the season sort of moved on and on for me.
Now, bear in mind that these two are both items of audio that I would want to keep the dynamic range in, which is why you can see here there is still quite a lot of dynamic range even after the presets are sitting there being applied lifetime. Once I click apply, obviously that would then be done destructively. This actually is from a podcast, the Bees Radio Network podcast, which you can check out via bracknellbees.com. The Bees Radio Network podcast, obviously, I like in a podcast to have some dynamic range in the audio. I don't want to crush it out too much. So you can see there that dynamic range is still there. If I normalize it up, you can see again, we'll just have to recreate the preview sequence, but you can see again now that has made not a massive difference to the look of the audio waveform, but it has got rid of that background noise mostly. There are just a few little bits now that have slipped through, but that's not a problem though. It's not a problem. Finally, let's have a look at the female voice here. This is from a podcast that I produced, and you can see again here, just a little bit of background noise here. That'll be a breath, I would imagine. Yes, that's a breath. Okay, but this stuff here is just some background noise. So again, pop on the presets, and that will pop open now. We'll get a little preview sequence created below. And you can see here that this background noise is still there. So we're going to pop on the dynamics, the auto gate, and that's got rid of most of the background noise, those little mouth clicks.
Actually, that's very interesting because
we have still got the breath there. The de-esser, again, now we're going to have to flip this on to output sibilance only. You can hear that there, can't you? Perception. In terms of the perception, in terms of the word perception, you can hear this. Okay, so we are hitting the right frequency there. When we get down to the parametric equalizer, oh, Very important when you set the DSer using output sibilance only, turn it off again so you can actually hear the rest of it too.
Actually, that's very interesting because you mentioned multiple forms of knowledge.
Now, we've already rolled off the bass in the FFT filter. What I'm thinking here is this is becoming a little bit sibilant again here.
And the perception of what the infection risk is, because that brings me to my next question on some of the challenges of the information that is out there. And as you know, unfortunately, there has been a lot of misinformation about COVID-19, especially on social media.
Ooh, I'm just going to carry on setting this. Hold on.
On social media. This misinformation comes in many forms, from conspiracy theories about the virus to unconventional treatments such as homegrown remedies can kill the virus. This misinformation can be very problematic as it may cause people to turn to ineffective treatments as well as to overreact, or more dangerously, underreact by deliberate.
Okay, so we've slightly changed the curve there. We've moved where this roll-off happens and we've given a little boost in the mid-range. As I did say in the last one, in terms of EQ, there is no one-size-fits-all. If somebody says to you, what are your EQ presets, no matter how you EQ, if somebody says to you, what are your EQ presets, there is no given right or wrong. It is all dependent on the microphone, because microphones have different responses across the frequencies, depending on what microphone you have. And it depends upon the voice as well. Some voices are deeper than others. Some voices are more sibilant than others. You cannot have a one-size-fits-all. So in terms of these presets here, when I am working, I have my bass presets to go to, and then I just have to go in and I just have to tweak them. You can see here that we've got rid of the noise by using dynamics. We've trapped the sibilance with the DSer. We've rolled off the bass with the FFT. We've polished up the rest of the EQ with the parametric equalizer. That tiny little bit of compression still allows for a full amount of dynamic range. And then just a hard limiter just to trap anything. You can see here we're very, very close here to exceeding 0 dB, which we don't want. So just a hard limiter there, just to ensure that everything we've done does not cause that audio to peak and clip. Even though we're in 32-bit float, we don't want clipping in our audio. So you can see here the workflow, which was what I was trying to illustrate. Firstly, repair. Please try and get the audio right. Don't use the de-reverb unless you have to. It's only in my rack here because I have been sent some voices that were just about recoverable in terms of room noise. Dynamics to get rid of any background noise. Bear in mind, of course, if you have got background noise, then the auto gate will open when audio crosses the threshold. So whatever you've set your threshold at, if that background noise is there and perceivable through the audio, once the rest of the audio, the voice therefore cuts above the threshold, you will also hear the background noise. In this case, it's only very, very quiet and it's drowned out when the actual audio, when the lady herself is speaking, it's drowned out. So it's not a disaster. So repair it first. In terms of the de-reverb, the dynamics, you may even have to use noise reduction if your audio is too bad, but then question whether if your audio is too bad, you will be able to get away with it and produce something professional. Then you move on to the tidying and the polishing of your audio, the de-esser to get rid of the sibilant S's, then some EQ via the FFT filter and the parametric equalizer just to get it sounding good. Single band compressor just gives a tiny, tiny little bit of leveling without removing all the dynamic range. And of course, the hard limiter, as I did say, gets rid of any peaks and therefore clipping. One thing though, like if you are producing imaging, let's say, you may want to really crank up that single band compressor. So you have a ratio of, let's say, 10:1 if you're producing imaging, and then just look straight away at the change that's going to make to the voice. Look, all of a sudden, it's a lot less dynamic. If we crank up the range even further, you'll see more of that dynamic range disappear, and we'll have to add in some makeup gain as well, just to bring that back now. But you can hear the difference that has made. Let's have a little listen.
Actually, that's very interesting because you mentioned multiple forms of knowledge and the perception. And
you can hear there, and you can see down the bottom, there's very little movement. When the lady is speaking, there is very, very little movement in terms of dynamic range left. If we put it back to where it was, 2:1 and no makeup gain, you'll see the dynamic range is back, and you can see in the VU meter down the bottom here, it will move up and down as the lady is speaking.
Actually, that's very interesting because you mentioned multiple forms of knowledge and the perception of what the infection risk is, because that brings me to my next question.
And there you go.
Challenge-
That's it. Job done. So repair first. Do whatever repair work you have to do. It's vital you get this in the right order. Repair first, then go into your de-essing, your EQ, tiny little bit of compression, and just make sure you have a hard limiter on at the end to ensure there is no clipping. Job done. Very, very important to remember that even here, in these presets that I have here, which are part of my multi-track template that I use whenever I'm producing, I am well aware that I will have to make changes. Certainly to the de-esser, have to make changes to the de-esser because everybody's voice is different, and also to the parametric equalizer. That's very important too. In terms of the FFT filter, I'm not going to make many changes, if any, to that, because all I want is to roll off that below 80 hertz amount there. It's 84.8 here. I just want to roll off that below 84 hertz in this case, because that's only ever going to contain unwanted bass rumble. So remember, no matter what presets you set up, if you then get sent some audio from someone else, you are going to have to work with your EQ curve to make sure it's right. You're going to have to set your de-esser as well. One other thing that you may have to do is you may have to play with the auto gate settings as well here. By default, if I load this back in by default here, you'll see that the auto gate is off. So by default, I don't have that on in my multi-track session, which is where these list of effects have come from. On the end there is mastering, which is, again, off by default. You will hear, though, if we turn that on, if we go into it, the mastering here, there's not really much mastering, bit of loudness maximizer, a bit of exciter as well. Not really much happening, but that's not happening anyway because it's turned off. So there you go. That's how I process audio. Repair, polish, finalize with your hard limiter. There you go. If you have any questions, as always, you can visit markdenham.com where the entire audio journey is there. You can see all of the parts and get the links to the accompanying videos as well. You can also go to the contact tab as well if you would like to ask any questions about this or any other part of your audio, then feel free to fire in a question there. Stick a comment on the YouTube video in the comment section as well. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you will get notified of upcoming videos as well. Keep yourself safe, have fun, produce amazing audio.